All right, everybody. I'm coming to you today with a quick episode around how do you find a good coach, or how do you know if you need good coaching or therapy or just any type of facilitator? Okay. Someone that can help you along a path where you might be feeling a little bit stuck. Now, first thing I want to say is obviously I'm going to be a little bit biased because I have my own coaching business. Okay. I specialize in working with executives, entrepreneurs, high performers who are struggling with burnout. Shameless plug. This is what I do. However, I do think there are some really important things we need to address because I think many people consider working with a coach or a therapist or any type of spiritual facilitator, having some type of mentorship, anything in that regard. I think people consider it all the time, but they don't know where to start in regards to how do I know who's right for me? Like who do I invest my time and energy with, right? So I'm hoping by the end of today's episode, it'll make it a little bit more clear for you on how to make the best decision for yourself. Now, let's just air out the elephant in the room in regards to the fact that the coaching industry is saturated. Okay. Like, let's just be honest about it. It seems like everyone is throwing up that term that they're a coach, and not saying that there aren't extremely good coaches and therapists, again, facilitators out there, but it's like, how do you know like who's actually about their business? How do you know that these people actually have something that's going to get me the result that I'm after? Right. And when there's so many people throwing out that term, like when I first started, guys, I was so hesitant to use that term. Like it gave me the ick, like, "Ugh, I'm a coach now." Like that's just the reality. Cause again, the market feels so saturated. And I was like, "Ugh, like, am I a coach? Do I have to use that term? Like, is there some other kind of cool term I can use?" I don't feel that way anymore, but that was the reality of when I first started. And I think we first need to be aware of the fact that in every industry, there are going to be good and bad people at their job, and not saying like they're a bad person as far as morally, some might be, but there are going to be people who are better at their jobs and people who aren't as good at their jobs. It doesn't matter what the industry is. Okay. I think we've all had doctors, that are great doctors who really care about getting to the root cause and healing people. And then there are doctors who are just there to like write your prescription. Like, I don't know if you've ever been there, but I've been in many a doctor's offices where they've asked me no more than two questions, and all of a sudden I have a prescription in my hand, and they don't even actually know what's wrong with me. How could they after asking two questions? Right? It's the same thing with teachers. I think everyone can agree how incredibly important teachers are. Obviously doctors too, but teachers as well. They're responsible for influencing our youth to such a degree, but there are teachers who really care about creating incredible, adults and kids who can think for themselves and know how to regulate themselves and become great adults. And there are teachers who are just mailing it in, and you're sitting there thinking, I'm sending my kid to school to spend 6 hours a day with you, and like, what type of human are you? And so, in any industry, there's going to be people who are really good at what they do and people who are just mailing it in for whatever reason. So, when it comes to the facilitator space, therapists, coaches, etc., you're going to find that same spread. It's just the reality of being human, and humans are flawed, and so that's just going to be the reality, right? Now, you might be asking, well, then how do I know who to invest my time and money with, Mintu? Like, I've been dealing with this for a while. Now my algorithm is sending like 20 coaches a day through my feed. And it's like, who do I work with? Like, who do I really bet on myself with? And one thing I will say, I'm going to get into a few things I think that can help you make that decision for yourself. But one thing I want you to be mindful of is that when I started working with coaches for myself, because I do have my own coaches, I have a business coach currently. I have had spiritual facilitators in the past that have helped me from a more spiritual, emotional side, working through like deep rooted wounds, things like that. And what I will say is, yes, you want to have a good facilitator and program that you're working through, but I always took the approach of I'm just going to get the most out of this that I can. So whatever, there's got to be something. There's going to be at least one or two things that I can take out of this journey, and I'm going to make it my mission to just make sure I extract at least that, regardless of how good that person is. There's got to be something I can learn about myself in the process. And when you take that perspective, and you know it's going to set you at least one or two notches ahead of where you're at right now, maybe it's going to be 10, 15, 100 notches. But if it's at least one or two, then you can know that the time and money you invested is going to be worth something. And it's like, how can I be the best student for whatever journey I'm about to embark on? And I think that's just a healthy perspective for life, whether it's a relationship or a job. How can I just make the most out of this journey, regardless of what's on the other side of that? Because we obviously can't control it. Like, I can't give you a crystal ball to say, oh, this is exactly what I'm going to get out of it, but the first thing I will say is just take that approach. And I think if you take that approach towards anything in life, you're always going to find your way through and you're always going to come out on top. Now, how do we know who's the right practitioner for you, right? How do we know? Well, I think the most obvious thing is who's walking the talk. When you're consuming someone's content or you're getting, a feel for them ahead of time. I know in certain industries, it's a little bit harder probably to do that. I'm not an expert, but I know there's, when it comes to therapists, there's way more regulations, things like that. But, who do you feel like is being genuine and authentic about the journey? And the way you gauge that is can you tell that they're actually living what they preach? And I know it might be hard to do that online because obviously it's a highlight reel, but asking that question. But also, how do they speak about the journey? Have they walked the shoes that you're walking and that you're going through? Like, are they open about sharing their journey with what you're dealing with and what they're helping you through? You know what I mean? Are they vulnerable about the fact that they experience the exact same things and that at one point they also didn't know any better, right? Like, are they being real about that? Or are they talking with a tone of a bit of, condescendence and judgment? Like, you should know better. Like, I'll be the first to say I was the queen of lying to myself. I was the queen of putting everyone else's needs before mine. That includes the needs of my employers, the needs of my people I was in relationship with. Like, I was so burnt out and dysregulated because I was so disconnected from myself internally that I did not even know how to take care of myself. And I did not know that I could build a career, a business, a life by actually honoring my needs. Like, I'm the poster child. I was the poster child for my current business, right? And that's why I'm so passionate about it, because I know where I was to where I am now. And so when you're looking through these facilitators and you're doing your research, it's like, are you living proof of where I want to get? I'll be honest. I in a previous relationship was seeing a couples therapist, and my first question was, are you married? Because if you're not married, and not that people who aren't married or aren't in long-term relationships can't have good relationship advice still, because there are also a lot of relationships out there that aren't healthy, and it's like, well, just because you've been together for 25 years but you hate each other, I don't know, how much information I want to take from you. But to me, it was important to have someone who had taken those vows and who had viewed that union as sacred, because at that time that's what we were working through it and seeing if we could get to the point of. We did not, thank God. However, it was important to me to have a facilitator who understood what taking those vows meant, right? And so, again, is the person walking the talk? And also, the other thing you want to be mindful of when you find a therapist or a coach is you don't want, I shouldn't tell you, you can do whatever you want. Okay. But in my opinion, I would be hesitant to work with someone who takes a very savior approach. And what does that mean? That means that they think they're the end all be all to your problems. Like, if you don't do it my way, you're going to be stuck in this cycle forever. right? If you don't, you know, do exactly what I'm saying, you're going to be doomed. You're never going to find your way. And also this energy of like, if you don't like feeling like you need them to get through the journey. Now, do I believe and do I know with every fiber in my being that I can help my clients out from where they're at to get to a different result? Yes, I believe in my system a million times fold. I've seen it done so many times now. So I am absolutely convinced and wholeheartedly believe it. However, do I think it's the only way for you to heal your burnout? No. Could you potentially get there on your own? Yes. Will you be able to do it as quickly? Maybe, maybe not. Right? Like with what I do is I'm giving you a 90-day process that took me 7 years to develop, right? Like through my own learning, et cetera. Like I've condensed it. So, but can you heal your own burnout? Of course you can, right? I did it myself. It just took me way longer, right? So any facilitator, again, therapist, coach who gives off a complex of they are your savior, I would ask questions about that, okay? Just because we're humans, and let's be honest, there's nothing new under the sun. Like even in my program is stellar. Again, tooting my own horn, not gonna be humble about it, or I am humble about it. Sorry, I'm not gonna downplay it because I've seen the results and the transformation of my clients. But everything I've condensed is nothing new. Like I have learned this from other facilitators and scientists, and I've done tons of studying and research on my own and practiced it myself. So everything I'm saying, I am not the first person to come up with it. It's just the way I've packaged it together that is unique to me. Okay, that's it. But the information, can you find it other places? Yeah, because I did at one point, right? So you want to be working with someone that is open and expansive. They don't have their own blind spots and thinking that they're the end all be all. And quite frankly, I always tell my clients, my goal with you is that you don't need me at the end of this, right? My goal with you is that when you leave this program, you have the tools you need to no longer have to live in that same repetitive cycle over and over. Okay. And I'm confident with the tools I give people, if you go back and refer to them and continue to apply them as your journey evolves, you'll always be able to be in alignment and reroute yourself whenever you need to. But if you constantly need me, then I'm not doing my job properly. Right. And, you know, I've heard this term in Ayurveda, which is the Eastern, East Indian, their practice of medicine, essentially, and health, their actual health practice, which is thousands and thousands of years old. And they have a saying that goes like, a good doctor doesn't have repeat clients. And that's how I look at it too. Like, do I love my clients and do I want to work with them? Yes. But I also always ask myself, like, you know, there should be a cap on our relationship at some point. Because if there's not, then I'm not doing my job to the best of my ability. Now, the other thing I would say you want to be aware of when you're looking for a facilitator or coach, and this might be a little bit harder to gauge before you start working with them, but you should never constantly be leaving a session feeling dysregulated or like always an emotional mess. Okay. Now, full disclosure, the first time my clients cry with me is like a check mark in my program. Okay. Like when I get the first cry, I'm like, yes, okay, we're getting somewhere. Right. And not because it's my goal to make them cry. I always laugh about this. But to me, I know, especially with my line of work, most of my clients come up with walls. I don't cry, weakness, don't want to be too emotional. I just make shit happen. Like that's my general field of people that I work with. That's not every coach and facilitators demographic. However, it's typical for mine. So when I get the first tear out of them, I always do a little fist pump and a yes, because to me, I know we're breaking through the mask that they've been wearing for so long. Okay. And, you know, within my 3-month journey that I go with people, on I can always count for at least 1 or 2 heavier emotional days throughout that process. Okay. Now, the goal is not, though, to make that continuously happen, because if you're constantly in a state of dysregulation, which means your nervous system doesn't feel safe, okay, then that means we're not allowing your body, your system to heal in a way where it can expand its capacity. It's going to keep saying, I'm not safe, I'm not safe. And when you're constantly doing that, you're not able to grow and expand. Okay. Now, the nervous system can say that in different ways, though. So there can be I'm not safe, therefore I'm going to continue working and being fast paced, and I'm not going to take a break, and I'm going to go, go, go. And that's one way you stay dysregulated. You stay in fight or flight all the time, because slowing down feels threatening to you and your survival and your worth. But also, on the other side of that is if once you've kind of broken through that barrier of allowing yourself to feel on a deeper level, we also don't want to keep you there too long, because then that's your nervous system is still going to say, I'm not safe. Like, I'm constantly upset, I'm constantly crying, I constantly feel sad. Like, we don't want to be in either state too long. It's about having a healthy harmony and balance between the two, right? So if you're going to session after session and you're continuously breaking down, it's I'm not an absolute person. I'm not saying this is black or white, or as black or white as it might sound like it's coming out of my mouth right now, but you should ask questions about that if every week you're upset, because then it's like, where are we really getting? Are we just staying in a repetitive pattern of pain? And I'll be honest, that is one thing I do hear from a lot of clients in regards to therapy. Now, again, going back to the first thing I said, there are incredible therapists out there, and there are therapists who are just mailing it in. However, I have heard from people where they say, like, therapy was good, but I don't want to keep reliving the pain of my past. Like, it's not fun to do that, right? But now we obviously can't be ignoring it. We know that, but I don't want to keep reliving all these painful memories. Like, I feel like I'm there every week doing that. And then the other thing they say is like, and then also it's like, okay, so once I talk it out and get it, it's like, well, so how do I now practically apply this to my life? Or is this person even giving me something to actually apply to my life? Because we're after transformation here, right? And so, with me specifically, we will tap into a couple of those past memories through the journey if that's what's called for. But my goal is never to keep you there. It's like, we don't have to keep reliving the memories, but can we just address that's what's been repressed? And that might just be like letting out some healthy anger. That might just be like, I finally need to like just cry it out a little bit because I've been holding this in for years. It might just be finally saying like, I haven't felt heard ever as a child. And now as an adult, I never feel heard either. And so I deal with it in different ways. Like, okay, we can tap into the root, but we don't need to stay there. So again, I know that's maybe a bit harder to gauge when you haven't worked with someone yet, but I would just ask yourself, like, how do I feel when I'm in this person's presence? And maybe that's just off the consult. Maybe that's, maybe that's from consuming their content. Like, when I watch their content, do I feel regulated? Do I feel seen and heard? Or do I feel like more dysregulated, maybe a little more angry, maybe a little bit more burnt out from taking in their energy, right? How do I feel? How does my nervous system feel after any type of interaction with them, right? And I think that should be a gauge for anything in life, with employers, with relationships, personal, intimate, whatever. I think that's something you have to take inventory of. And also, again, because I'm not a black or white person, it doesn't always mean that the other person's dysregulating to you. It doesn't mean necessarily that they're the issue, but it's an invitation when you're constantly feel that to ask more questions. Now, one more thing I think I would add to that list is the person that you're working with, are they also in a growth mindset for themselves? Okay. And what that means is, as facilitators, coaches, therapists, it is easy for us to sometimes, when we find a method that's working, to just that blind spot or blinders. Sorry, we have blinders on. Like, this is my method, this is what I'm doing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And yeah, if something's working, we don't have to, what do they say? You don't have to reinvent the wheel. Like, if it's working, we keep doing it. Yes. But just like I said earlier, is that facilitator walking the talk? Like, in my opinion, if you are helping people on a journey, if you're guiding them in any way, shape, or form, mentoring, offering therapy, coaching, being any type of healing facilitator, like, you need to constantly be growing yourself. Okay? Because the journey never stops for any human being. You might have it figured out to one point, but eventually there's going to be something else that comes up and something else that comes up. And you yourself, A, need to be taking your own advice. And then B, also need to be constantly expanding. And in my opinion, any type of leadership role, which is what these are, you have the biggest responsibility to continue evolving and growing because you are leading other people on a path. And that is a very, very sacred thing to do, to be of service, I think, which is beautiful as a human to do. However, like, that requires a lot of responsibility. And so whether you're but whether you're a manager and you have a sales team of 12 people, or you're a CEO and you have 300 employees, or you're a mother or a father and you got 2 little kids, or you're a coach, or you're a therapist, or just you're anywhere, you're in any type of position to lead, there is a lot of responsibility that comes with that. And that doesn't mean to berate yourself and shame yourself more into doing a good job. It just means that you need to honor the path that you've chosen by being in this leadership position and constantly ask yourself, am I serving in a way that's uplifting not only to others but to myself? Because in the only way for that to be sustainable in whatever position you're in, it means that you need to be taking care of yourself first and foremost. Because if you're constantly giving to everyone else first, we all know where that ends up. That's a perpetual cycle of burnout. That's a very disconnected human being. And I say that because I've been there, right? So when you're looking for someone to work with, are they in a growth mindset? Are they constantly evolving? Are they constantly looking for what other tools and you know tips, tricks? I know that sounds so cliche, but just like, what other things are they developing within themselves that they can offer to you as a client? Right? I know for me, I'm constantly seeking more freedom, right? And that might sound like very vague, like freedom, but like not freedom necessarily just on the external. I think that's a byproduct of it, but freedom internally. So anything that comes up for me that is a challenge, I'm very open with my clients about that. I went through a breakup in September that was really hard for me. However, it taught me so much about self-acceptance. And I was very vocal with all my clients when it was relevant to bring that up as an example. Hey, this is what I'm going through. I didn't pretend my life is perfect. I don't pretend that I have it all together. I say, hey, this is what I'm going through, but also this is what I've learned from it. And I take it as my responsibility to be at least 10, 50, 100 steps ahead of the people that I'm taking care of. And not because I'm better than them, but because I understand my responsibility as a coach and a facilitator. I actually am a Reiki practitioner, which is an energy healing modality. I read Akashic records. I also do a very unique healing modality called white sapphire light encoding, which to my understanding, I've never met anyone else in the world who does it. But I used to do that for people a lot as well too. And the reason I still do it for those who ask or those who are seeking it out. However, it's not my main focus, mainly for the fact that when I was doing that, someone would come see me for energy clearing or healing. And maybe they would go do more with the work after, like once we cleared and centered their energies and all that, maybe they would try and stay on it. But I found that often what they do is they'd feel great for a few weeks. And then all of a sudden, if they'd fall back into the same patterns, they'd need to see me again. So I kind of ended up in that savior type dynamic, which is great that I can offer some relief for a little bit. But to me, it's not true transformation. I don't want to help people transform. I want to help people suffer less. And again, that's why I take being in this position so seriously, and I treat it with the utmost sacred, like I'm just take it very, what's the word I'm looking for, guys? Like, I'm just really intentional. Okay. I'm really intentional. I look at it with a lot of integrity. There's the word I'm looking for. I am very centered in what this work is. I don't take it lightly. I make sure that my integrity to the highest level is always present so that I can serve people to the best of my ability. And again, to me, the best leaders are always the most vulnerable. I'm never going to sit here and pretend I got it all together. I'm going to be a straight shooter about what's going on with me. I'm an open book. And I feel like because I'm in a constant growth mentality, that regardless of my work, whatever's happening in my personal life, I'm a constant seeker of truth. I'm a constant seeker of freedom. I'm a constant seeker of acceptance and love. And those things are what have allowed me to have the path that I currently have, be on the journey that I'm on, and allow me to impart some wisdom on others. And you can take it for whatever it's worth. Maybe it resonates with you, maybe it doesn't. I'm never going to force it on you. But I think that's the most honorable thing that I can do with the position I am in, is just always be growing, always be learning, be extremely vulnerable to the people I'm working with, and know that I always have your best intention at heart. And when I started this business, like, I didn't really even know what I was doing from a business perspective per se, but I knew that I just wanted to help people suffer less. That's always been the goal for me. How do I help people suffer less? And there's a few different ways I could have done that. This is the way I'm doing it now. And maybe in 10 years, it's going to look completely different. Like, who knows? But that will forever be my mission. It's just to help people suffer less. And you should know, if you're listening to this, again, whether you're working with me currently, whether you're thinking about it, whether you're thinking of working with someone else or finding a therapist, whatever that is, it doesn't have to be the way it is right now. Whatever lens you're seeing through, whatever vision you currently have, every single person has blind spots. Every single person has a certain veil that they see through, me included. Okay. And the point of having a coach or a therapist, any type of facilitator, is to help you see beyond those blind spots and help you expand your perspective for what's possible. That should always be your goal going into it. Okay. And so if you're not sure if you can do it yourself, like, bet on you reaching out to someone and them being able to help you further along the way. Like, don't be scared to, like, we spend money and time on stupid things, guys. Let's be honest, right? Time, TikTok, Instagram. Oh my God. Like, how many hours get wasted a day on that? Money, clothes, food, like irrelevant things. Like, spend that time and money on you. And I promise you, it will be the best investment you ever make. Whatever you choose to do, whoever you choose to work with, like, anytime I've ever hit a really, like, tough point in my life, anytime I've really hit a wall in my life, I've always invested in myself more. All right, so I'm having a hard time getting through this. How can I invest in me more? And maybe that's reading a book. Maybe that's going to the gym. Those are investments in yourself too. But sometimes it's been investing in a therapist or investing in a coach, like, whatever the journey's calling for at that time. So I hope this little quick episode will help you today. If you've been considering working with me or with someone else, I hope that it helps you make a decision on who you want to spend your time and energy with. I hope it reinforces the fact that it's okay to ask for help. In fact, it's probably the most honorable thing to do, is just be upfront about the fact that you might be a little stuck and you need some support. And I hope it offers some support in the sense that, there are really great people out there. And I think that as humans, the parts that we're typically the most ashamed of are the parts of us that bring us closer together, because we're all dealing with it in some way, shape, or form. And it is incredible how empowering it is when you can get in community with people who are having similar journeys to yourself and who are either working through it currently or have found their way to the light of whatever that light is looking like for you, and I think right now in the world we are being um conditioned to be more isolated, and that's just the nature of the internet. Working from home, I work from home now, all my stuff's online, like we're naturally being separated a little bit more, so even more reason to find community and to find the people that can breathe life into you and that can point out your blind spots and that aren't going to always say yes to you, that are going to poke some holes, that are going to trigger you a little bit. You know what I mean? Like these are the things you want. But I was saying earlier with one of the checkpoints with my clients is that they cry at one point. Another checkpoint I have on my list is that at some point they want to cancel on me, and not cancel the journey, but cancel their session. And 9 times out of 10, they want to cancel it is because they've had a really hard day and they don't want to hear what I have to say. And I'm not offended by that at all. That to me is a sign of growth. That's a sign to me that we're getting beneath the layers. Okay. I had one client, which I've talked about on a previous episode, where she had a really hard day. She's dealt with severe depression in the past and she had been doing great. And then this one particular day, she spiraled. And when we got on the session, she's like, I wanted to cancel this so bad. And even when she said that, she was cold, she was closed off, not like she had been up to that point in our journey. And she wasn't really open with me about what was going on. And so I just held space for her. I didn't force her to talk to me. I didn't force the answer out of her. I just took my time with her. And by the end of the 90 minutes, she felt lighter. She was being more open, telling me more about what was going on. And she's like, I wanted to cancel this session so bad. She's like, because there's a voice inside of me that doesn't like you. She's like, it didn't want it. Like, it's like, what does Minh-Thu got to say? What does she know? Why do we need to even talk to her today? Like, fuck that. Let's just stay in this spiral we're in. She's like, I also knew that what I needed to do was show up. But my old subconscious, that old version of me was saying like, essentially like, fuck Minh-Thu. And I said to her, thank you for telling me that. Like, thank you for being so open and honest. I don't take that personal at all, because what that shows me is that there's a version of you that's starting to resist the growth that it knows you're doing. We call it the subconscious, the ego, whatever. It's this old mask that you've been wearing. And I represent, for my clients, growth. I represent potential. I represent a completely different way of viewing themselves than they have been. And so there's naturally going to be an old version of them that's going to start resisting that at some point. And that's okay. Again, to me, that's another checkpoint of the list of me knowing that I'm doing my job. And I take that very seriously, again, with a lot of integrity, and I welcome it. So I hope today's episode helped you if you've been considering working with someone. If you have more questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. Send me a message on Instagram. That's probably the best way to reach me. You can send me a message on LinkedIn too. But just take the chance on you. Don't let another day, week, month go by of you continuing to stay in the same cycle of whatever you're going through. Maybe it's burnout. Maybe it's self-loathing. Maybe it's constantly berating yourself and beating yourself down, telling yourself you're not worthy. Maybe it's not eating healthy, whatever it is, whatever unhealthy pattern you've been stuck in for a long time. Don't let another day go by of being stuck in it. You can start at any time, and anyone who's living a dream life, who's an expert in something, who's successful in something, they all started as beginners at some point. They all had no idea what they were doing at some point. And every successful person I know, like truly successful, not just monetary, people who really have purposeful, fulfilling lives, who are making an impact, whether that's on a small level or a big level, who just have peace internally. Every single one of them I know, they are willing to start and just choose a different reality. And maybe picking a coach or a therapist or whatever is the first step for you.